So welcome to the Peer-to-Peer mobility panel this morning. We've got a great panel for you here today. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Kyle Bowen. I'm the Director of Education Technology Services at Penn State University. And I'm really excited to be joining you this morning, especially talking about mobility in particular as a topic that has kind of really transformed or changed everything, every way that we work in our everyday lives, right? Even most of you now have a device, at least one device in your hand or in front of you, something like that. And it reminds me of when I was a kid and I used to travel, take these road trips with my parents. And we used to sit in the back seat of the family car with my sister, battling for control of the line. You know, that line that runs down the middle of the back seat that creates this no-fly zone that separates two halves of a car. Many a battle was waged over that line. Now, my parents, in an effort to draw a truce between my sister and I, they invested in travel board games, which is a good enough idea. You see, the idea with a travel board game is fairly simple. You take a regular-sized game and then you shrink it down until it's not really fun anymore. So if you thought that Monopoly was frustrating before, wait until you play it with a pair of tweezers. And, well, Connect 4 is fun enough, but the pieces are so small, we were losing them all the time, and after a while we're playing Connect 3, and let's just face it, that's just tic-tac-toe. Right? So we have the same challenge as we pursue mobile devices. Right? What we don't want to do is just take the thing we had always done and just shrink it down and put it on a smaller screen. It creates this opportunity to begin to rethink, how do these devices change the way we interact? Right? We already see that in the way we interact with our friends. Right? I bet every one of us has a friend that if we called them on the phone right now, they would never answer. But if we texted them, they would probably text us right back. What does that say about our friendship? Well, I wanted you to have my number, but I didn't want you to actually call me, right? So it changes how we interact with one another, and these types of interactions also change how the campus functions at every level. Whether it be within inside the classroom or outside the classroom, on campus or off, it changes how we interact. Today we have a good panel of speakers to talk about to talk a little bit about the role that mobility has on campus. First, we'll be hearing from Steve Schwartz, who's the CIO at Fitchburg State University. Hold on a second, I'm going to grab my notes here. His presence here today is sponsored by Moto Labs. Steve has worked in IT over the last 20 years in various capacities. As director of IT within the large law firms, as manager of IS, the nation's largest private home health provider, and CTO for a level 1 trauma certified hospital and university. So Steve clearly knows how to deal with urgent situations. In particular, prior to his career in IT, Steve also worked in a nuclear missile unit in West Germany for the U.S. Army, which I'm sure aids him in higher education every day, dealing with explosive situations. After Steve, we'll hear from Charles Cooper, who's the Assistant Director of IT at Leslie University, and he's sponsored today by Fresh Desk. Charles Cooper is the Assistant Director of IT at Leslie and has been with his institution for 10 years. He's responsible for overseeing all the aspects of IT, which includes the classroom, includes lab support, includes asset management and strategic planning. He was a recent recipient of Leslie University's Impact Awards, and he was recognized by the university president for his contributions to the institution, most recently kind of the insourcing of a help desk and call center function. And last, we'll hear from Perry Sampson, who's a professor at the University of Michigan. He's the professor of atmospheric oceanic space sciences and professor of entrepreneurship in the College of Engineering. He holds the Arthur F. Thoreau Professorship in recognition of outstanding contributions to undergraduate education and is a recipient of the 2009 Teaching Innovation Award at the University of Michigan. In 2010, is Distinguished Professor of the Year of the President's Council of Universities in the state of Michigan. Perry is also an entrepreneur, and that's how I think many of us have grown to meet him. He co-founded the Weather Underground, which was acquired in 2012 by the Weather Channel. He also founded Lecture Tools, which provides new technologies to help students interact inside of large classrooms. And this technology was acquired by Echo 360. And as a result, Perry now holds a position of Senior VP for Teaching Innovation at Echo 360. So with that, please let me introduce Steve Schwartz. Steve Schwartz is our first panelist today.
So thank you. I'm Steve. Good morning. I will try and keep this light moving a little faster. Thanks for that thunderous round of applause when I came up here. That really made me feel welcome. You're doing a great job. Yeah, all right. You might want to save it to the end. Put your vote then. So I'll try and talk to you a little bit about our mobile strategy at Fitchburg State. And I'll put it in context a little bit, and that's if I can work my iPad. Fitchburg State is in north central Massachusetts. We have about 7,000 students, 2,000 of which live in the dorms on campus. Liberal arts school, mainly known for nursing education, typical Massachusetts small state liberal arts school. Our one claim to fame is maybe we produce more graduate degrees than any of the other state schools. Now that's excluding the UMass system. Which is kind of interesting because we're about fourth in size in that same group. So I joined Fitchburg State about 5 years ago. And I try and always work a toilet picture into my presentation. So if you've seen me before, this is, it's like Arnold saying I'll be back. But we have a whole bunch of projects we've been working on trying to get ready for this ubiquitous access that people want. And so we started with network access control on our campus so that if someone brings a device in that we don't manage, it has to go through a series of steps before it's granted access to our network. We did a wireless upgrade where we brought in 4 years ago 802.11n across the entire campus and put it in all the areas. Prior to that, it had only been in a few classrooms. We started a portal project and then backed away. And for our portal project, we're a banner school. So we were doing Luminous, and we were right on the cusp of bringing out Luminous 4 when they went to Luminous 5, and so we reworked and redid everything. And as we kept working on that project, not only were we encountering some technological issues with that, but we were also kind of keeping our ear to the ground. And I attended a conference in Wellesley that Ravi puts out every year. And they did a panel of 3 schools that had phenomenal portals. And it was interesting because during that panel, someone asked a question about what are you working on? And all 3 of them were working on bringing up mobile websites. And they all thought, to be honest with you, that the portal was kind of dying and that things were going to switch towards more and more mobility. We are a big virtual desktop shop. So we went with VMware, thin clients, VDI, Windows 7 desktops 3.5 years ago. In fact, we're coming up on our first refresh of that gear, which helps with mobility and giving access to software. We were doing a main website redesign, which took almost all of our resources internally on marketing and communications and had them very stressed about the new main website redesign and left almost no personnel available for any type of mobile website help. We brought up an electronic course catalog and made sure it used HTML5. We're an Acalog school, if you're wondering. And finally, we were looking at doing some sort of an iPad pilot on campus. And so all of these things converged, and it really comes down, it helps put another brick in the wall to your mobile strategy. For us, we saw with the main website redesign, it was a perfect time to then bring out some sort of a mobile website concurrently with that. And we looked around, did a lot of research with a lot of different companies, and we ended up choosing Moto Labs. And I'll talk a little bit about the criteria. You know, for us, when we look at mobility and the increase on this, everybody here, if you work in higher ed, you know mobility is skyrocketing. I rode the Green Line in here this morning, and I was stunned at the few people who did not have a cell phone in their face as they rode the subway. It's unreal how this has come about in society. We have 81% of the people on campus now have a smartphone with web browser built into it. That's up from about 60% 3 years ago. On our tablet usage, now I only have since last November, so I'll have new data this November when we ask again, but our tablet usage increased to 21% of all the people on campus, which jumped 10% in only 2 years' time. I suspect by looking around that we're going to be even higher than that this fall. And we can see ENAC registrations. So true story, when you come on campus, you have to register your devices, and we give everybody a 20 device limit each for registering their MAC addresses in their device. For the first time last year, we had one student with 21 different wireless devices, and we had to make an exception to him. So it's definitely increasing. You know, our criteria when we look for a mobile website was we needed a product that could be brought up really quickly, because we had a lot of strategic talks on campus and decided to shut down our portal project and instead take those resources and put them towards a mobile website. We thought there was more bang for the buck in that. So we needed something, I needed a quick win. It had to be supported, including custom supports. So if we want to take our athletic website and roll it into this, I needed not only the product to have that ability, but I needed to be able to pay somebody else to help us do that. I have a 35-person IT shop. I don't have a lot of programmers, and the ones that I did have were working on the main website. So I needed full support on this. I have on my last bullet there, we must have some protection from vendor disappearance. If you are a CIO or you're a director of IT right now, I'll bet you your phone rings probably once every week, if not at least every 2 weeks, with another company telling you about their great mobile website product. We needed somebody that was going to last, that had a good track record. And frankly, if they ended up instead going towards selling the next great thing, which is, I believe, Melaleuca soap products, we could still operate their system. And so, and it's got to be, for us, it had to be optimized for different screens. And because we were doing this in phases, it had to be rapidly changed, which meant we were really looking at a product that could do HTML5 in addition to apps. If you think back 3 years ago, every time you made a minor change in your app, Apple went through a 2 to 4 week approval process before it was out on their store and ready for download. We needed something faster than that. And so we ended up partnering with Moto Labs. And so Moto Labs in phase 1, which was in 2012, we brought up these different modules within the program. And so we signed with Moto, I want to say we signed with them in June, and 30 days later we had these in production live for people to use. It's a very quick product for these modules to bring in. And full disclaimer, I see Andy and Charlie sitting over here. Moto is here. They're over at this table. Andy's waving, so if you want to talk to them, that's great. Picture, anybody know where that is? It's really cool. Google Images is amazing. So this is the Apple store right across the street from here when the iPad 1 went on sale. So that's the morning of the iPad 1. So watch. 10 months later, the iPad 2 comes out. This is what it looks like the morning of the iPad 2. This is the greatest demonstration I can think of mobility increasing as far as its importance goes. They went all the way down the block in 3 lines and had to hire police to maintain the line, where the year earlier it was a group of 50 people standing in front of the door. So our phase 2, so now next year, and these are not done in a perfect 12-month cycle. We brought these up throughout that next year. We brought up admissions and admissions modules so students can actually learn about our school, apply through that. We brought up a self-tour. We do not have the ability or staffing for people to get a tour of our campus over the weekend, so now they can get a live self-contained tour as they walk across campus. We brought up shuttle tracking, which has been the #1 driver of our students to our website. I haven't told these guys this, but we looked at our stats in March and April, and we averaged 19,000 views for where is the shuttle alone on our campus. Remember, I only have 7,000 students total. and half of those already live on campus. So the fact that we had 19,000 hits looking at our live shuttle tracking was phenomenal. We brought up an alumni module so that those that aren't on campus but have gotten their degrees from us can have some connection. Some library services, dining hours, menus, that type of thing, social media. We have a give button. That's turned out really neat, where if our alumni director or someone's speaking and they're talking about the great things our school's doing, and somebody says, you know what, can I give you $50? Can I donate $100? They can actually do it through our mobile website, get an electronic receipt, and no cash has to change hands. And that's an integration through Razor's Edge. And finally, we brought up the full desktop version, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. And in phase 3, this is what we're looking at doing right now. The registrar module will be live here before we start school. That allows students to find what classrooms they're in, their grades. If they have a hold, they can even pay their bill through there. Our LMS, which we use Blackboard, is coming up with an integration on that, and the integration on that will be better than Blackboard's mobile product, which I don't think is very good. Our laundry app, we're looking at integrating that so that students, if you're up on the 8th floor of one of the dorms, you can see if a dryer or washer is available, or if not, when one will become available. We're upgrading to Kurogo V2, which is the open source platform that this whole website structure lives on, which gives us that vendor disappearance protection that I talked about. And finally, we're looking at responsive design. And so the one thing that we are looking at is I did HTML5. Sorry, let me skip back one. We're looking at now bringing up the apps for Android and iOS as a part of this. With the Kurogo V2 upgrade, we can change it once, and it actually flushes out to those apps pretty much automatically. And they've redesigned the app to where it's a shell from what you get from Apple. So as you update things in the background, you can publish them and they'll pick it up on the iOS app without having to go through that onerous Apple approval process. And the reason why we're looking at the apps is this. What this is showing you is percentage of time spent looking at information on a mobile phone, and you can see that for mobile web, they're only spending about 13% of their time using mobile web compared to using mobile apps. And so now that we've gotten past that upgradability, I think that's the direction we're going to go. And finally, I will leave you with this picture. So this is actually our website. I just took these screenshots the other day. On the left is what it looks like if you're pulling it up on a phone. On the upper right is what it looks like if you're in landscape mode with an iPad or Android tablet. And then finally on the lower right is what it looks like if you're on a full computer. And that's been important. What's really strange is we brought this up and we thought this would be great, and we find our staff using the mobile website on their full desktop so they can see when the cafeteria is open, what the menus are, and where the shuttles are. And so that's turned out to be a good experience for us. So that's what I'll leave it with. Thank you. And now you can applaud wildly.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Cooper, and I'm the Assistant Director for Information Technology at Lesley University. And I actually report to the CIO, and I oversee our Technology Support Services group. Our mobile initiative began with our governance committee. I'm not sure if other individuals and institutions have governance committees, but we have one specifically for technology. And so essentially we'll have different professors and other leaders from our university meet to talk about our strategic plan. So we had a new CIO that started a couple of years ago, and so in creating our strategic plan, he actually created a task force to look at emerging technologies, and so one of those technologies obviously was mobile. And the challenge that we faced at Lesley was all of our systems that we had did not have mobile components, and we would have to have hired a third-party integrator to essentially get those systems talking to each other, which is very expensive. And so we, in our committee, we formed essentially in the strategic plan going forward that we would pick services that had mobile solutions built into them going forward. So hopefully that, we didn't have to go backwards, but going forwards, all services would have mobility built into them. So at Leslie, when someone wants a particular service or software, they have to come through IT, and so we would review those and vet those to ensure that they had mobile built into them. A few of the examples of them would be our website, and so we had a director of web services who was looking to revamp our website, and they went with a company that was able to essentially dynamically change the view of the website based upon the browser that they were using. So if it was an iPad or an Android device, the view of the website would slim down. We also look to implement a new access control, which is actually going in this summer. Blackboard, we were on an older version of Blackboard that was working for us. However, the version that we were on, we couldn't use the mobile application, and so we actually did an RFP for a new system, but we decided to stick with Blackboard and move forward with a newer version so that way we could support mobile applications there. We also use ADP for our administrative services through HR, and so there's an application where employees can actually look up their pay stubs, get their W-2 forms using the application on Android or an iPhone. And then within my purview, since I oversee our technology support services group, we were going through a change where we had outsourced our help desk to a third party. The third party was using a ticketing system that could only be viewed on a Windows computer, specifically Internet Explorer. So if one of my techs got a ticket, they'd get an email notification, and then they couldn't do anything about it. It was a subject line, not much about what to do, and click on the link. You go to the browser on Android, and nothing. So we were looking at a new ticketing system, and we found Freshdesk last year. They had a mobile component which was browser based at the time, and that was enough for us so that the techs could click on their phone, they could bring up their ticket and get all the details right on their phone. Since then it's evolved, and so there are applications that are available on Android as well as iOS. And so what we've done is, since we insourced our help desk, we actually we make use of our student employees, and so we have an entire staff of student employees who support our classroom technology. So professors trying to do a presentation, connect their iPad or their computer to the projector, obviously they need assistance. We have students who are in the general vicinity there. They'll get a ticket that comes in. We give them an iPod Touch. They have an application on the iPod Touch. They can go assist the professor. They can update the ticket right on the go before they even got back to the office. And so with Freshdesk, there's actually, the application allows you to take pictures, and so they can have a lot of detail within the ticket that we weren't getting from another previous ticketing system. The other thing that with our student employees is that Freshdesk includes a gamification piece to it. So as students are closing out tickets, if they're creating knowledge-based articles, they're actually getting points for the work that they're doing. And it's been amazing seeing this motivation with students, because it's almost like Foursquare where they're checking in, or when they're using Facebook and all these other types of social medias where they're getting points. The mobile application, they're working, they're actually finalizing their tasks, and then they're getting points, and then they go back to the computer and they check to see where am I in on the top list. And it's been amazing because work is actually getting done. And since switching to Freshdesk, we've actually for the last year we have a 95% success rate for customer satisfaction. People are after they've closed out a ticket, they're responding saying I'm happy with the service, and obviously people who are providing this feedback, they're either really upset or they're really happy, and they've been really happy with the service that they've received from us, and as well as the communication through the ticketing system. So there's a lot of automation going on in the background, like many ticketing systems where you reply to a ticket or you close out a ticket. It's providing information, but we have automation built in where full-time staff have written responses, and it allows the student technicians to actually click on a button, check the canned response, shoots off an email right back to the individual, and can close the ticket immediately, so that there's not a lot that they have to do, and they don't have to be technicians. They seem like they're experts, but what they've actually done is all our knowledge and all our expertise has been put into this ticketing system, and they're actually just using our mobile application and responding and using our canned responses. So it's been great from from the standpoint of having that mobility from our students being able to go out without having a computer and assist our community. Another thing with the Fresh Desk system from the mobility standpoint is the chat feature and our knowledge base. So we have a portal that's support.leslie.edu. So someone from on a mobile phone, they can actually look up knowledge base articles that we have. If they're not finding what they're looking for, they can actually start a chat session right from their browser on their phone. And they can get quick answers from one of our agents that we have in our call centers or one of our technicians that might be in the field working as well. Let's see. So essentially, the mobile piece for the ticketing system it's more of an augmentation model. So they do have computers they're working on, but the mobile client for our technicians, they're installing it on their iPad devices on their mobile phones. And we're located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Some of our technicians have long commutes, so they're able to answer some tickets on the fly. And so that's been really helpful. Where there was a lot of downtime where people weren't doing any work with our previous ticketing system, you can actually have individuals getting stuff done while they're en route to different locations. So with that, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm here to represent the older generation, I guess. I am a professor at the University of Michigan. I've been a professor there for 35 years. Clearly, the coffee isn't ready yet. It occurs to me that at universities, and I'm not sure why I'm speaking here, I'm like that State Farm guy who's like your worst fear, the disaster that's going to happen. I'm the guy who wants to use stuff in the classroom. I don't give a squat about security. I build stuff, worse yet. And I'll try it all the time in my class. I actually have my students on day one sign a sheet of paper that says, and fill in your name, have a sense of humor. I'm going to try technology in this course, and it's not going to work. Get over it. And the students are good with that. It's people like Charles and Steve here who hate me, and probably rightfully so. It also occurs to me that when you're at a university or a college, that the university and college, despite their liberal education, are loath to change. Really trying to get the campus to change, the administrators to change, my colleagues to change, is a daunting task. And so here, there's an opportunity, I think. There's an opportunity in these tools that we're talking about today, the mobile tools, because I created this one called Lecture Tools, and everything I do, I only do because I'm a lazy man. I created the Weather Underground because I wanted to have weather information for my 9 o'clock class. And this was before the internet. I mean, it was a telnet session. We had 80 people a week using the system. We knew them on a first-name basis. And then Hurricane Bob happened. It jumped to 50,000 people that week. And we said, this network thing could be big. And now it's like 17 million a day using that system. So, and the lecture tools I created because my chairman said, I want you to teach the intro course. And any faculty members here know that you're so looking forward to that opportunity. So you're asked to teach the intro course, and he said, I also would like you to increase the number of students. It's called Weather and Climate. It's got about 40 students a semester. So I changed the course a little bit, but changed the name of the course to be Extreme Weather. And now I have 250 students in the course. Put extreme in front of whatever you're teaching, and you'll do better, I guarantee that. But when you're now facing all these blank faces, how do you know what they don't know? How do you interact with them? How do you take that large learning environment and make it better? We're going to get over it. We're not going to all go rush out and have small classrooms. We're all going to have we're still going to continue to have the large classrooms for economic reasons. So how can we raise the bar in those classes? And that's what this tool is about. And as a meteorologist, I will stand here and argue with you that many in the exhibit hall here are creating tools which we can use in the classroom. Mobile tools we talked about you're getting calls every week about mobile tools. Well, those mobile tools in my mind are just thermometers in a meteorological sense. We have sensors that are out there that students are using. They're just sensors. And really, we can sell more and more of these sensors, and that's not the interesting part. The interesting part you want is what's the forecast for the weekend. That's what you want. So likewise, as we go to these kinds of tools, you have more and more of these tools collecting data, but ultimately we're going to need to process those data through learning analytics into tools that we can use to forecast student success. I gave a talk here yesterday about now with these tools, I'm seeing things about my students I have never known in my 35 years at Michigan, about how they use the technology, about how they actually engage with the material that I'm presenting in class. How many slides do they take notes on? How many questions do they answer? How many questions do they answer correctly during class? And lo and behold, I have tools now so that week 2, I can predict which students are going to do well and which are going to do poorly. In fact, we have tools that even measure their emotional and physical state. Is it creeping you out yet? I'm collecting so much data about my students that I never knew before, and I'm not sure I'm ready to knowledgeably do something about that. The challenge now is not the creation of more tools, more mobile this and mobile that, as was pointed out here by others. You know, gosh knows what this conversation is going to be like in 3 years. You know, the Google Glasses are changing our education, or the iPad 7 is coming out and it knows what you're thinking. I mean, technologies will keep changing, but we have to start thinking about you as instructors, you as instructional technologists are going to have access to data you've never had before. What are you going to do with it? And how is that going to improve the educational experience for the students? And how are you going to help them become more successful through that process? That, in my mind, is the real challenge. Mobility is, another way for me to go out and create new stuff that will break and won't be secure but it's more opportunities for me to collect new kinds of data. And I think that's the big news here is what's the challenge? The last idea I'll throw out to you in this world of mobility, and as data is being collected, is right now, all too often the vendors keep that data in their own proprietary systems. That's just wrong. This data ought to be made available back to the institution in some sort of pipe, with security and whatever. But they ought to be made available back to the institution so that you could set up a sandbox. And in that sandbox, all the data, maybe coming from your LMS on one, coming from your student information system on another, coming from whatever vendor of the day, flows into that system. And in that sandbox, you can now invite faculty and students to be that dangerous person. Allow them to have access to those data anonymized for whatever you need, but allow them to build tools that they think are useful. This is how we're going to improve the quality of our education, is by giving the students and our faculty the opportunities to build the tools we need. And through the use of these data and making those data available through mobile devices and other, I think that opportunity is coming and will be here soon. Thank you very much.
So with that, I think we have some time to field some questions. You have questions for we have our first question already, right back there.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm curious on the mobile side, how the university environment, in your cases, are adapting to accessibility. Because in the PC world and the Mac world, accessibility up until very recently was an add-on to vendors. Now, in addition to the legal and moral applications, it's going to the financial application for a vendor. So how are you dealing with accessibility for blind, deaf, people with mobility issues, intellectual challenges in a mobile environment that is not really designed for that? Thank you.
Is that a microphone there on the?
So I talked a little bit about the fact that we redesigned main website, as well as brought up a mobile website, and both of those were designed with ADA compliancy. As a state school, we spend an enormous amount of resources for disabled students. We actually have an entire division devoted just to them and helping them make adjustments so that they can learn. In fact, we have a Scholar Award every year, and the Scholar Award this year, which would have been in April, went to a student who is an industrial technology student who is quadriplegic. See him all the time because IT is actually in that building, and great kid. The thing that I will tell you, what we're seeing through our disability services are, and again, I'm going to be very Apple-centric here because we are a predominantly Apple-centric campus. The iPad has brought more accommodations for disability than probably any electronic device that has ever been mass-produced. There is, if you ever want to see a really interesting demo, we started off with an Apple engineer at our campus, and he took an iPad and he put it into blind mode. And I don't know if you're even aware that they do this, but the screen actually looks like this when it's on, and it uses your finger pressure and screen reads to let a blind person completely interact with an iPad. It's phenomenal. And there's a lot of other accommodations on there. So I guess I don't have a great specific example for you other than to tell you that because we have an entire division devoted to that, they sit at the table and help with everything that we do. It's a huge part of how we interact with our students.
My answer is a little bit shorter, but we actually do have a disability services group. They are frequently going out and looking for different solutions because they're working with students on a day-to-day basis. So for IT's involvement in it, what we're doing is we're putting the technology in their hands, essentially, and working directly with them. So, for example, our website, being ADA compliant, we had our disability services director review all that for compliance sake. So we are working hand in hand with those groups. We don't have anyone in our shop who's specifically trained on ADA compliance. However, we can recognize when there might be an issue that might come up. So we do work very closely with those groups.
Another question. Yeah.
The question was, the first question was, do I use the data in my own classes? I didn't get the second part of the question. Yes. I'll start with that then. Yes, yes, and in fact, thank you for that, reminding me I was supposed to tell you something. The results from my exploration of these data are available online and at a website called sageonstage.com. That is my blog. And if you go there, you'll see some of the results that we've been seeing. For example, there's a very good correlation between student GPA coming into the class and the grade they're going to get in the class. That's not a surprise. But that's uninteresting to me because I can't change their GPA coming into the course. What's interesting to me is what can I do? So what I've done is looked at how does students in class behave based on their GPA coming into the course. And lo and behold, there's wild differences in how students with low GPAs behave in course versus, and without taking a long story here, the website has it all, but my course is offered in a hybrid format. Because I have 250 now, the room holds 100. You can either physically come to class or you can watch it online. But even if you're watching it online, you can use this tool, lecture tools, to answer questions, ask questions, take notes, interact with other students and such. So by measuring everything they're doing, whether they're in class or out of class, I can see now that the students with low GPA are far more likely to, they answer fewer questions during class, but not a lot fewer, but they take far fewer notes. And I'm talking like an order of magnitude fewer notes than the students with high GPA. The students with low GPA are far more likely to watch class remotely, where the students with high GPA are far more likely to come to class. I would have known this before. So I'm learning a great deal. And what I'm hoping to do in the fall is to take these data, these kinds of results, and present them to the students on day one and say, I don't know where you fall in this category, but you should know that there is a significant difference in how students in the past have behaved in this course, depending on your background. And if you have the low background, you might want to think about changing what you're doing because it's not working. But these data, and being able to collect this and analyze them for the first time, giving me the opportunity to have that conversation with the students. Before, I would just tell them to work hard, whatever, read the book. But now I can be far more specific about what things you might want to be doing. Was there a second part to your question?
Yes, you say something about the app.
Oh yeah, this app is called Lecture Tools, and you go lecturetools.com. It's an app where students can, your slides are uploaded into the system. You present with PowerPoint still, but the students then have access to your slides. They can now draw on your slides. They can indicate when they're confused, and you get a meter in front of them showing you how many students are confused. They take notes, and it mines how many notes each student is taking per day. And most importantly, they can pose questions. And here's a place where mobile has a huge value, because this adding this button, everything, by the way, the students came up with this idea, by adding a button where they can pose a question during class. These questions also stream on my screen in the front of the room. I ignore them, but they can ask the questions when they have them. And I'm blessed with a teaching assistant with 200 students who answers the questions in real time while I'm teaching. But otherwise, they just build up and I'd answer them after class. The important thing here is they can ask the questions when they have them. Second, it turns out I ask on day one, are you comfortable asking a question in a large lecture hall? And it turns out half the men said yes, half the men said no. But only about a third of the female students said they were comfortable. So from day one, I've systematically had an uneven playing field. But when you add that button and they can ask the question, the answers come back so that you see the questions, you see the answers, but you never see who asked the question. Women are now asking far more questions than men in my class. And this is success. I have leveled the playing field. Everyone can participate. And if you give the students the opportunity to participate with mobile devices, they will. Those who argue, I'm on my soapbox now. Those who argue that you should ban laptops in the classroom, be damned. The opportunity is here to, if you design your laptop apps properly, you're going to invite the students to participate, and if you invite them to participate, they will. Thank you.
Perry, you should have paused for an amen there. That's,
Do I have a witness?
Yes, sir.
Scott Bukel with Campus M. We're a company that provides also a mobile platform similar to Moto. For Steve, I just had a question. You mentioned we're getting ready to do some Blackboard integration.
Yes.
My question is, we've had some experience with Blackboard. We know sometimes they can be a little bit difficult in terms of access. What is your plan in terms of getting that? It's your data. We know that it's your data. But getting it through that system. Is it direct access? Are you looking at APIs?
No, we use the API for that, and we're actually have been testing this for quite some time. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I think that the Blackboard app, the way it's designed right now, it's really not very useful to anyone. It's slightly useful to students if you're running a discussion board, and they charge quite a bit of money for I don't know, useless product. Now, we just left a future roadshow from them. They were actually on our campus yesterday, and they showed us what they're coming out, and they actually are splitting their app to where there's an instructor version and a student version, which makes a little more sense. It gives you a little more capability. But for right now, we're going through the API, and we're trying to custom design the information that's presented based upon what our students have told us that they wanted, rather than just what the company provides.
Are you also doing that with Banner as well, or
Yes. Yep.
separately, or through the single app?
Nope, through the single app. Yep.
We had a question over here. Yeah. Did you catch it?
So I caught.
So the question was, as students bring mobile devices into the classroom, how are you coping with increased demands for bandwidth and wireless access?
You have to design your network to handle it. There's no shortcut. You know, we were lucky enough that we went in, and when we did our wireless system on, so the great thing about when I came to Fitchburg State was it was pretty easy to improve the level of wireless access because we had a really antiquated, very isolated system that only had coverage in some areas. The advantage of being the last, what felt like the last in the state to actually address wireless for their students, was we were able to leap ahead, and so we were able to do the 802.11n and a full system kind of when it wasn't bleeding edge, and we designed it with that. Now, having said that, your wireless system, though, it's a living, breathing network. You are always adding, subtracting, moving, changing power levels based upon everything. We do surveys in our dorms every summer to see where things are needed, and we actually take a lot of student feedback. That's probably the best indicator. So when they complain about an area, you need to go in. But when they come in and they put their clothes in the closet, it actually changes the RF signal strength. So you're kind of always modifying it. We're in a Terrasis, which is now Extreme Network Shop, and we went with their product, which is actually a Siemens German product, and that system has been fantastic. It's been able to handle the excess loads without breaking a sweat. So at least on this version, it hasn't been that much of a problem.
Charles, did you want to add anything?
You want to add into that?
I can definitely agree, about the living, breathing network. So we actually have a division of IT that handles our network, and so we actually had a company come in and they did an assessment of our network, and this was last year, and based on that assessment, we actually made changes to our network. So we're adding access points to different areas where there wasn't coverage. Also, the student feedback, within our ticketing system, we're getting feedback from the community about not being able to, access the wireless from dorm rooms or in specific areas. And so being able to track that information through our ticketing system and then being able to report out on that information has been very helpful to our networking group.
So you're asking Charles if he gets feedback?
Oh,
from us?
you're asking if Perry is getting.
Am I having trouble? Yeah. No, there are days, certainly, there are dark spots in the classroom. We've had situations, Lecture Tools is now at 100 universities, and we always run into some class where they actually put in good wireless systems, and they forget that somewhere along the way there's a dial-in modem. I mean, just things happen like that. But I thank God for people like Charles and Steve, because they can usually fix it relatively fast. Those technical problems are relatively tiny compared to the pedagogical issues that I'm facing, I say.
Right. One last question.
For Professor Sanson, how many of the faculty you work with are like yourself and have adopted some of this technology and are actually using it in the classroom? And then what are some ways you think that that number could increase?
Oh, that is the best question, yes. How many are like me? I won't even try to answer that. I hope few. But what you're really asking is how do we get more my colleagues, your colleagues, to try the new, let's just say new pedagogy in the classroom, much less technology. And that's a challenge because the people who are successful in the academic, the only people who are teaching are those who are successful in the academic program, and so they learned in a way that's been going on for years. So the challenge here is to change their views. I would give you two answers to that. First is, and what I'm doing right now is to come up with enough evidence. I'm in the College of Engineering, and so I damn well better come to you with some evidence that the effort I'm asking you to take is justified, that there is value in it, and we're close to that. Now, if you go to that sageonstage.com, you'll see this ongoing building up of evidence here about why is it you would want to change your class, as number one. And then second, we find that it's very useful to form community around this topic. We rarely get together at schools like Michigan to talk about our teaching. We don't think our beans are being counted based on our teaching. In fact, once a year I'm asked in my annual review about, they come to me with a review of, and the only question I ever get about my teaching basically is, did you hurt anyone this year? If I go 3 years in a row without hurting somebody, I get a teaching award. And we got to raise the bar, and we don't give a lot of credence to teaching. So what I found, though, is that all of us who walk into the classroom want to teach well. We just don't necessarily want to put a lot of energy into it because we have other things that we think are more important. So how do we do that? Probably going to a Center for Learning and Teaching is one way, but that you have to stop your workflow and then go do that and come back. I found it far more better to include alcohol. So I started inviting faculty off campus to an event where we would just talk about our teaching and talk about things we could change or make better, and offered beverages. And in fact, went out and bought the name Keganar, keganar.com. That's me. For a far better webinar, come to the Keganar. I also bought the name Weednar, by the way, just for you from Colorado. So what we're trying to do here is just make it a social thing. If you can make it social, despite being engineers, we are social sometimes. We have the capacity to sit down and talk, and we're all interested in this topic. But we'd like to find ways to be able to teach better, to be pedagogically sounder, without a whole lot more work. Just last thought for this. In our system, your slides are uploaded, and the students have access to that. When you do that, we can strip the words off your slide. We know what you're teaching about now. We know how many slides you use. We know how many questions you're asking your students. There's an opportunity there now for the instructional technologists to jump in and say, whoa, you've got 70 slides for a 50-minute presentation. You didn't ask the students any questions, fool. Did you know the education research shows you should do this or that? Somehow, if we could embed that in their normal workflow, I think there's opportunities. If I can give you evidence that there's going to be a change in your class, I think there's an opportunity. But it behooves us to come up with that data, and it behooves us to come up with those opportunities.
Thank you very much. With that, let's thank our panelists today.